Well, hello there. Welcome back for another edition of AOBO Online. It's your host, Mr. Remke, here to go through another section of the course. In this particular section of the course, we're going to focus on ATSEP 132, the statutes that relate to motor vehicle repair practices, and really the documentation that goes along with it. This statute is focused on consumer protection when customers bring their vehicles into a repair facility for a repair. The statute provides practices, prohibited practices, and requirements for documentation that must be provided to the customer along the repair process. So have you ever had a supervisor or an instructor hound you about not having all the details on your repair order? Yes, we just like to pick on you once in a while too, but in all honesty, as we dig into this unit, I think you'll see why you got hounded. One missed detail could mean the shop is liable for the cost of the repair, could mean actually even more than that if they were to make violations to these particular statutes. So these repair orders are legally binding documents, and there is a statute in the Wisconsin Agriculture Trade Consumer Protection Division that basically sets up good practices, prohibited practices, and what documentation must be provided to that customer when they bring it in for a repair. So we're going to dig into that section by section and take a look at that. As we go through this virtual lecture, there is the accompanied PowerPoint. It'd probably be a good idea to open that up in a separate window again and click through it as we go through the virtual lecture. There are links out to ATSEP 132. It's a pretty short document. It's broken down into very easy and digestible sections. So that's what you're going to end up doing, is opening up that document. You can click on the link through the PowerPoint or click on the link in course materials. And we're basically just going to review shortly, briefly each section, and then you'll do some assignments to kind of build your knowledge from there. Alright, so if you were to click on the link down here and go out to ATSEP 132, the first subsection of that would be the definitions. So if you don't understand what a term truly means in this document, this is where you're going to go ahead and look it up. I did put an example in the PowerPoint of truly what do they consider a motor vehicle. So in a paragraph of lawyer terms, it basically explains in there that any vehicle, motor vehicle that operates on the Wisconsin highway that is up to a 16,000 pound rating is covered under the section ATSEP 132. A motor vehicle that is over 16,000 pounds, so kind of towards the bottom of the list, has its own set of statutes for commercial vehicles. Us being light duty techs, ATSEP 132 applies to the vehicles that we would be servicing. So take a few minutes and just read through the definition section, subsection 1, and just take a look around and see what some of those terms are. And then refer to it as needed. If you're unsure of what a term truly means, come back to subsection 1. And as we move on to subsection 2, we're going to move into the repair authorization section of ATSEP 132. No shop may perform any repair that has not been authorized by the customer. So that's one of the big bold statements that you'll find as you read through subsection 2. Before a shop starts any repairs whose total price may exceed $50, big flashing lights on $50, a shop representative shall record the repair authorization on a written repair order under subsection 3 of ATSEP 132. Basically, subsection 3 will break down all the requirements that must be in the written repair order. Most shops truly do create repair orders for repairs that are even less than $50, but the statutes ATSEP 132 mandate that you must give a written repair order if it will exceed $50 in total. So kind of just to break that down, most shops record all transactions with customers, but it's mandated you do it at $50 or more. If the vehicle is received face-to-face, customers should sign the repair order, so you'll kind of read that as a statement in subsection 2. Vehicles brought to the shop without face-to-face contact between the customer and a shop rep. Authorization may be given in person, by telephone, or any other form of communication between the customer and the shop. The clause is basically stating that we could accept an email as repair authorization. In today's world, we could accept texts, we could accept phone calls, so there's multiple ways that we could get that authorization from the customer. One other statement that you'll read in subsection 2 is that authorization to perform a general repair implies authorization to perform the specific repairs that are normally included in the general repair. Kind of a humble jumble of terms, but I gave you the example if the shop's replacing a wheel bearing. It is implied that the brakes would have to be removed to replace the bearing, so the customer is also giving us authorization to remove the brakes to replace the wheel bearing or any type of situation like that. Take a few more minutes and read through subsection 2, and we will move on to subsection. Okay, and in subsection 3, they break down what is truly required to be inside of a written repair order. So before a shop starts any repairs whose total price may exceed $50, a shop representative shall prepare a written repair order that clearly and legibly describes the repairs authorized by the customer. The repair order shall include the 9 items that are on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint screen or listed in subsection 3, and the customers must be provided a copy of this particular repair order. These are pretty important. To make your repair order legal or in conformity, it must have at minimum these 9 items: the name and address of the shop, name and address of the customer, model, make, and license number of the motor vehicle, the repair price information required in the next subsection number 4, the estimated date by which the repair will be completed if an estimated completion date is required by subsection 5. Notice that the customer is entitled to inspect or receive any components, parts, or accessories replaced or removed by the shop. A description of the repairs authorized by the customer, the date the repair order is written, and the signature of a shop rep must be on the repair order and must be presented to the customer. Take a few moments and go ahead and review subsection 3, and we will move on to the subsection 4. Okay, in subsection 4, it is going to break down the repair price information. So before a shop starts any repairs whose total price may exceed $50, a shop representative shall provide the customer with neither a written statement of estimate alternatives or a firm price quotation, and we're going to break those down one by one coming up. A statement of estimate alternatives, if provided, shall be conspicuously printed in the following form, either on the repair order or on a separate document attached to the repair order. To make this more simple and kind of break it down, you have to include the written estimate alternative statement or provide firm price quotations, and in the next couple slides we'll kind of show the details. Okay. Most shops do prefer to use the estimate alternatives option. This is typically printed on their repair order verbatim, word for word. The estimate alternative statements basically breaks down the customer and gives them 3 options. So let's just take a look at the statement. You are entitled to a price estimate for the repairs you have authorized. The repair price may be less than the estimate, but will not exceed the estimate without your permission. Your signature will indicate your estimate selection, so they get to choose one of 3. Number 1, I request an estimate in writing before you begin repairs. 2, please proceed with repairs, but call me before continuing if the price will exceed blank dollars, and they get to fill in those dollars. And then number 3, I don't want an estimate, go ahead and just fix it. So to kind of look at this and kind of the experience as being a service advisor, option 1 is used very often. Customers will just simply sign that and say, I want an estimate before you proceed. Okay. Option number 2, in my opinion, is probably the most commonly used. This one allows you to authorize like a diagnostic time or a diagnostic fee, and then call the customer back for a additional authorization once you've come to the root cause and have an estimate for that. So option 2 is very, very common. We could use it to allow them to authorize diagnostic time. Customers could authorize a flat fee, so if they were in for a front brake pad rotor replacement, we could tell them that, like, let's say averagely that's about $300 or less on the particular vehicle they own. So the customer could write in there, please proceed with repairs, but call me if before continuing if the price will exceed $300 equal. If we can come in under that with the total price with tax and parts and labor and sublet, we can go ahead and perform that procedure because the customer's authorized it. But if we even go 1 penny over $300, we must call them back and get additional authorization. This leaves a lot of flexibility. Option number 3, I do not want an estimate, is very rarely used, but boy are these good customers to have. So just kind of as a weird outside of the PowerPoint recording, it'd be kind of neat if you do have a repair order that you've had on one of your vehicles or a family member's. If it was performed in the state of Wisconsin, the repairs were, do they actually include this estimate alternative statement on the repair orders? And the second option that a shop has is to provide the customer with a firm price quotation. These are a little less common. They are kind of a little bit more set in stone on a price that the repair will be, much less flexible. So firm price quotation, if provided, does have to have a statement on the repair order verbatim that says this price for the authorized repair will not be exceeded if the motor vehicle is delivered to the shop within 5 days. So a firm price quotation is just truly what it says. You must, if you use this option, you must provide to the penny the exact price for the repair. It would be valid for 5 days. It can get a little bit sticky in this situation. I'd have to say the most commonly used firm price quotations would be for tires, something that a shop could absolutely quote down to the penny and not have it change within 5 days. Very rarely from there on out are firm price quotations used. Typically it's estimate alternatives, but please make sure you read in that subsection and make sure you get all the details about both, because the document does say we have the legal option to use either one. We must just follow the rules and regulations within inside of it. We'll be moving on to the next subsection of Trans 132 shortly, but let's just quickly talk about estimates required. So if any of the following has occurred, a shop representative shall give the customer an oral or written estimate and shall write that estimate on the repair order before the shop starts on any repairs whose total price may exceed $50. So if any of these 4 things happen, you also must provide them an estimate. The customer has signed an estimate alternative number 1. So if they've signed that on their repair order, we must provide them an estimate. There has been face-to-face contact between the customer and a shop rep, but the customer has not signed any of the estimate alternatives. We must then provide them an estimate. It kind of defaults to that. If you forget to have the customer sign one of the 3 options, it defaults to number 1, and just basically legally we must provide them an estimate. The shop has accepted any prepayment from the customer. So if you have, say, a customer in with an engine failure and they're truly going to want to replace the engine, and you'll know you'll be into a $3,000 repair, the shop may accept a prepayment of, say, 50%. You must then provide that customer an estimate. Or if the customer has requested an estimate before authorizing a repair under subsection 2. So really what this boils down to be, your repair order sets up that you could legally start working on the car to do diagnostics or the service. But if they do sign that number 1 alternative, or if somehow the service advisor forgets to have them sign it at all, it defaults to basically you must provide the customer with an estimate at that point as well. Moving on to subsection number 5 then. Subsection 5 relates to estimated completion dates, so make sure you take just a few moments and read through that. But statement number 1 says that before a shop starts any repairs for which the shop has accepted a prepayment of $250 or more, a shop rep shall give the customer an oral or written estimate of the repair completion date and shall record that estimated completion date on the repair order. Basically, to boil that down simply and easy, if your shop collects a prepayment of more than $250, you must provide an estimated completion date. If you do not accept that prepayment, okay, For statement number 1, really, we do not have to provide them an estimated completion date. Typically we do because customers want to know when their car is going to be done, but for some of your larger repairs, it's kind of hard to predict that estimated completion date. If you accept that prepayment of $250, it's required you give them a completion date. And then for statement number 2, if a shop is required to give an estimated completion date under subsection 1, but fails to do so, the estimated completion date is the same date that the motor vehicle component, part, or accessory is delivered to the shop for repair. So you got to kind of watch this. If you do need to provide an estimate completion date, you make sure you do it, or you only have the day that those particular components, parts, or accessories are delivered to the shop. Puts a little teeth in there, and make sure that if you're accepting a prepayment that you're provided a completion date. Like I said, most of the time we provide completion dates because customers do want to know when their cars will be done, but it's legally required for those two particular situations. Moving on to subsection number 6 then. Okay, subsection 6 is going to cover additional authorizations. So if we have the customer in on for a repair order and they've authorized diagnostics only, we determine what the cause is, we provide them a new monetary value of what it's going to be to repair the vehicle. That is considered an additional authorization. So no shop may perform any additional repairs beyond those previously authorized by the customer unless the customer authorizes those additional repairs after receiving the information required under subsection A of this particular subsection 6. Authorization may be given by telephone or other means, so it doesn't mean that we have to have the customer come back in. But if we are going to go over that first monetary value on the repair order, so let's give an example. If they authorized $80 for diagnostics, we determine what the cause is, and it's going to be $300 to repair it total. We cannot proceed with the repairs up and above the $80 pre-authorized if we don't give them a call back, if we don't give them a re-email, or somehow contact them and get them to authorize additional repairs. When we do call or communicate to get the additional authorization, ATSUP 132 does require the 5 things listed. So the date and time of the authorization, the name and person of the person who gave the additional authorization, a description of the additional repairs authorized, the new total price estimated provided under those subsections listed, and the new estimated completion date, if any or if required. So if we do need to call back and to get authorization in additional amounts, we must provide this on the repair order, these 5 criteria, and make sure it's there. We do not have a legally binding document. So take just a few moments and make sure you review subsection 6. This is a pretty important one. Definitely has some criteria like the written repair order and the invoice that's upcoming. Have to have these on your repair order to make it legal, to make it in conformity. So we'll be moving on to subsection 7. When you review subsection 7, it is the basically replace parts, return or inspection statements. So the general requirement, if a shop replaces or permanently removes any components, parts, or accessories from a customer's motor vehicle as part of the repair, the shop shall return those components, parts, or accessories to the customer before the shop starts the repair. The customer requests the return of the components, parts, or accessories. So that kind of got a little bit conjumbled in there. Just break that down. You must have on your repair order a statement that says, do you want the parts that we have replaced on your vehicle, or would you like to inspect them? The exemption down on the bottom kind of explains that not all parts would be able to be returned. So if we were to get, say, a rebuilt transmission, there may be a core on that transmission. So the customer would be legally able to inspect the core before we sent it back to confirm that we did the repair that we said we did. If it is something that is not under the exemption, then we must return that part to them if they check that box on the repair order. So it does require, and probably the easiest way is to have that statement on there. Do you want to inspect or receive the replaced parts you are entitled to? So that's something that should be on repair orders and should be legally presented to the customer as an option. Okay, so moving on to subsection 8. Subsection 8 covers all the requirements that must be on the repair invoice. The repair invoice is basically going to be that final document that when the customer comes to pick up and pay, that we provide to them. So it also has 11 different items, 11 different criteria, 11 different pieces of information that must be on it to make it legal, to make it in conformity. So go ahead and take a few moments and read all of those 11 items. Those items clearly must be on the repair order, and you cannot skip any of them, you cannot modify any of them, they must be there. So take a few moments and go ahead and review those 11 items, and then we'll just talk about a few of them and move on to the last few subsections of this particular document, ATSUP 132. Okay, so let's go ahead and break those 11 down. Number 1 is pretty straightforward. We must have the name and address of our shop on our repair invoice. Number 2, we must have the name and address of the customer. Number 3, the date on which the repaired motor vehicle component, part, or accessory is tendered back to the customer. The model, make, and license number of the motor vehicle, if the motor vehicle has been in the shop's possession. The odometer reading when the motor vehicle was received by the shop, if the motor vehicle has been in the shop's possession. The price for the repairs stated as the total price or separate total prices for parts and labor. An itemized description of the labor, parts, components, and accessories supplied in connection with repairs, including items supplied without cost or at a reduced cost because of a shop or manufacturer's warranty. If units of labor time based on flat rate average times are stated on the invoice, the actual labor time shall also be stated. That's kind of an odd one. Number 8, if any item under subsection 7 carries a warranty from the shop or manufacturer, a statement or notation indicating that fact must be on the repair order. For number 9, if any item under subsection 7 is used, rebuilt, recycled, or reconditioned, a statement or notation indicating that fact must be provided on the repair invoice. The identity of each person performing the repairs, including the name of any shop that performed all or part of the repairs as a subcontractor, or what we call sublet. If a shop employs more than 10 repair personnel who work in teams, the repair invoice may specify the name of the team leader whose team performed the repairs instead of the individuals who perform the repairs, provided the shop keeps records indicating which team members worked on each repair. And then the last final one, number 11, the following statement printed verbatim must be provided on our repair invoice, word for word. So those are definitely some details that we've tried to teach you from day one in the program. You think we're hounding you about just getting the mileage in there to pick on you for fun? No, ATSUP 132 clearly says on our repair invoice that odometer reading must be there to make a legally binding repair invoice. The statement on the bottom, number 11, has to be there. All of this criteria must be on there to make a legally binding repair order and in conformity with ATSUP 132. Let's go ahead and move on to subsection 9, as soon as you're done reviewing subsection 8 here. Subsection 9 is going to take you just a few minutes. Subsection 9 basically comes out of the documentation world and kind of clearly states all of the prohibited practices that are not allowed in the state of Wisconsin. These repair practices are broken down into a couple sections in subsection number 9. So please take a few moments here, maybe even more than a few moments. Click on the link and read all those prohibited practices. It clearly calls out that the shops cannot do those particular practices. These are not allowed in the state of Wisconsin to make sure that the consumers are protected and to make sure that the shops are ethical and professional establishments. This is going to take a few moments for you to get through that. When you're done, come ahead back to the video, and we'll finish up with the last couple sections of ATSUP 132. All right, so those were quite a few prohibited practices listed, but definitely sets up and should make you feel a little bit more safe as a consumer bringing your vehicle into a shop in Wisconsin. It's not to say that every shop follows those word for word, bit for bit, but they could be legally bound or legally responsible if a customer were to pursue some type of a civil suit or some type of a formal process. So basically should make customers feel more safe, more consumer friendly as they bring their vehicles in for repairs into the shops that are located in Wisconsin. The last two subsections of ATSUP 32 talk about rules enforcement, show you your assignments, and we are officially done with this particular virtual lecture. Subsection 10 talks about repair records, basically shows the mandates of how long shops should retain their documents. So a shop shall keep all of the following repair records: the repair order and repair invoice for each repair, including any additional authorization, records identifying the individual repair personnel who worked on each repair, invoices for motor vehicle parts, components, and accessories purchased by the shops, and then basically tells us that the shop must retain those for at least 2 years. So each repair order, each repair invoice with additional authorization documents, records identifying personnel, which typically is going to just simply be on your repair order or in your electronic software if you're using it, and then invoices for the parts, components, and accessories purchased by the shop. We don't need to provide those to the customer, but we need to retain those legally for 2 years. And we need to be able to make those available for inspection or copying by the Agriculture Trade Consumer Protection Division, and that's out until 2 years. You can see why most shops have went from handwritten repair orders over to electronic repair order systems. It helps keep these documents in line and easy access for us. Let's talk about the last subsection 11 and end this lecture here in just a few moments. So the last subsection, subsection 11, does give a few waivers. Really relates to fleets that have more than 4 motor vehicles, and take just a few moments and read through the waivers themselves. If you're working in a facility that does a lot of fleet service or is a fleet service garage, you may be into the waiver section of ATSUP 132. So rule enforcement. This one isn't going to be found actually in the document itself. It goes out into other Wisconsin statutes. But what would happen if a shop did not follow these statutes, did not provide a repair order, didn't provide all the documents or all the criteria in an invoice, or did some of the unethical practices, or basically performed a prohibited practice? What could they be up against as far as a penalty? So you'll see 4 of them on there. There is a private remedy. If you read that, a person who suffers a monetary loss because a shop violated ATSUP 132 may sue the shop under statute 100.20 subsection 5 and may recover twice the amount of the loss. That's expensive. So that makes you want to fill out those repair orders and make sure you're following all the statutes and the additional authorizations and giving invoices, because you could be liable for twice the amount of loss. There could be an injunction and restitution through the Agriculture Trade and Consumer Protection, so option number 2. There potentially could be a civil forfeiture. That's not the right way to say it, but basically you could be up against a civil lawsuit would be another way to say it. Sorry for the word toss. I'm getting better at these videos, but not perfect. And there also could be potentially criminal prosecution if you were to get to a certain level, to a certain of unethical practices. So if the shop was performing things that were actually met the criminal criteria under statutes 100.26 subsection 3, that shop may actually be fined up to $5,000 or sentenced to much as a year in jail, or both. To kind of summarize this up, you better make sure if you ever owned your own facility, if you're a personnel or a technician in the facility or a service advisor or a service manager, you need to know ATSIP 132 to legally basically cover your butt and make sure that you're following all of those statutes and making sure that customers are coming in and protected against prohibited practices and unethical repairs and unethical authorizations and things like that. So to kind of summarize all of this up, ATSIP 132 is a very important document. If you always thought we were hounding you about making sure that Mitchell 1 was filled out properly, this is why right here. It's very important. It sometimes can be hard to make sure every detail is covered. Every piece of the puzzle is linked together on a repair order or an invoice, but ATSIP 132 legally requires it, and we must do that as professional automotive technicians and repair facilities. Okay, so let's go ahead and end this virtual lecture out by just showing you the assignments that must be completed by September 28th at 11:59. You're going to go ahead, just like the last section of the course, and post an article to the discussion board related to any topic in this section that we covered. Or you can go ahead and post a question you have about ATSIP 132. There may be a section that you don't understand. Post that on the discussion board. So maybe students can help explain it in there. I can sure help alleviate any of those questions. So assignment number 1, post and reply, just like we've always done, okay? Post a discussion board article or a question and reply to a classmate's discussion board or post as well. Only other assignment inside of this section is to complete the repair practices documentation final exam. 10 questions, kind of goes through it. A few of the questions are just questions, simply go through the documents, find the answers. 3 of them actually have example repair orders that you'll click on a link. You'll look at those example repair orders and basically answer some questions or see if those are in conformity or if they're missing information. So not just simply a question and answer style exam, you will actually be examining 3 example repair orders that I created and seeing if you can come up with the answers that I've asked about those. If you have any questions, make sure you contact me through email. Go ahead and send me a text or give me a call if you need it. Stop me in the hallway after class. Some type of way if you need help. I'll make sure to help and get that to you. This is our last kind of notes on here. Repair orders kind of seem, when you first get into the program, like they're not very important. Eventually, as you start writing more and more and more, you see that, oh man, yeah, there is. And then as you review this particular section, it opens up your eyes. The state of Wisconsin truly requires us to have all these details to make those consumers safe, to make them feel protected and that they're not going to get ripped off. So make sure you take a few minutes, find your article, post it, reply to a classmate's, do the final exam, and we will see you in the next edition of AOBO Online.